All right then, lads. Welcome back to Kossi's Arsenal podcast. My name is Kossi. We are back again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in all parts of the world. It's another Sunday show. Obviously, Sunday is one of those very, very slow days in terms of football content and news. And I know you people always do trust me to bring you the latest in terms of Arsenal news, views, and opinions. And of course, that is what we are going to do in this Sunday episode. We will talk about Raheem Sterling, because there are a couple of more stories now around Arsenal and Raheem Sterling, but I think all these stories are coming from the fact that now Sterling is really struggling to break into that Manchester City side, especially with Jack Grealish, Phil Foden, Riyad Mahrez, and the likes of Ferran Torres, who are already on fire. So it's gonna be very hard for Raheem Sterling to break into. Mikel Arteta wants the player. He will be expensive, and of course I've seen Newcastle also linked with the man as well. Of course, Newcastle, the new big kids on the block, they got the money, they're ready to spend it. They could spend 500 million. They could spend $1 billion, because they already have 300 billion pounds through their ownership, so they could spend $1 billion and they couldn't feel it. So Raheem Sterling to Arsenal, what are the possibilities? We talked about this in the summer, and I was still on the wall, and I still believe I am on the wall on this, but we will discuss that in a little bit later. Of course, we will talk about Saka to Newcastle. There's so many players that have been linked with Newcastle. It's not only Saka, it's Raheem Sterling, it's Kylian Mbappe, it's Erling Haaland, it's Philippe Coutinho, it's whoever is good. It's whoever is top class, has been linked with a move to Newcastle. So I will discuss what I think about the talk of Newcastle raiding Arsenal for Bukayo Saka, which I think is something that will happen at some point in time. We might not agree to sell because we still have that possibility. We still have that with that option. We might not agree to sell, but in the end, I still think Arsenal is gonna have a lot of trouble with Newcastle and the big boys on the block, fighting off competition, fighting off bids for players like Smith Rowe, fighting off bids for players like for players like William Saliba, and also fighting off bids for players like Bukayo Saka. So we'll try to dive into that as well, and see, does it make any sense? Does it make any difference if Arsenal got 100 million or 150 million from Newcastle for Bukayo Saka? Can we turn that down? For me, it's a big question. It's an absolutely very, very big question. Can we turn that bid down? Do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel as well. I will discuss later later in the video. We will talk about again another prominent figure that could be a free agent in the summer, but again linked with Arsenal in January, and that is Frank Casey, AC Milan. This guy, I don't know why he's still at AC Milan. I think for the past two transfer windows, United, Arsenal, and Chelsea have always kept very close tabs on Frank Casey. I don't know why he's still at AC Milan, but I think at some point in time he will move. I pray it doesn't come to Newcastle, but I don't know, probably in January we could see Arsenal getting more and more developments. Of course, yesterday we did talk about the 5 strikers that Arsenal could sign. The likes of Dusan Vlahovic, who are really, really, really young, and contracts are really running down, so Arsenal could use the opportunity. The likes of Oli Watkins and a couple of others. So let us try to dive into these three and see what exactly is the bigger picture. And later in the day, I will discuss Mikel Arteta's possible new contract, the fact that he has 4 easy games coming up. He could win another 10 points out of a possible 12 points, right? So we will discuss that later in the day at 7 in the Super Arsenal podcast, and later in the day we'll have the evening Arsenal show. Good morning, Arsenal. This is the morning Arsenal show. Let's get our party started. Now, to start the party, let's start off with Raheem Sterling to Arsenal. Now, these are links that have been linked, that have been alive right from the summer. I don't think they have ever died to an extent where it's absolutely off. And what is giving these links power, energy, life, and and credibility and believability is a couple of is a couple of reasons lined up all together. If you discuss them as a sum, it makes a lot of sense. Let's look at some of the reasons. One, you have Raheem Sterling had worked with Mikel Arteta at Manchester City. So for me, it's not a scare. It's not a big scare when Mikel Arteta wants to regress back. Wants to go back to that stage where he played with, he worked with Raheem Sterling. It could be the fact that he loves the player, because I don't think that these links are actually coming from are actually coming out of nowhere. And the reason that's why I believe these links are not coming out of nowhere is Raheem Sterling is a top player. Yes, we know Pep Guardiola has already told us that a couple of players from his squad would love to leave the club, including Bernardo Silva, who has actually been more regular, in Manchester City's first 7 games of the season. So you have Bernardo Silva. I think Sterling is also part of that after the introduction of Jack Grealish, that we will see as another reason. I think the introduction of Jack Grealish also means a lot for the future of Raheem Sterling. Sadly, this means that he could replace him at Manchester City and at the England national team as well, because I think the competition is not only at City. The competition also falls also travels to the England to the England national team. If Grealish does well for City and plays 30 games or 35 games in the season, I doubt he's gonna be dropped by Southgate. I doubt he's gonna be on the bench. It's gonna be absolutely impossible. So I think that's the first reason. Mikel Arteta working with Raheem Sterling, maybe he wants him back, and he's looking at this is looking at this as a time where you can get a player you've worked with you've worked with at Manchester City, of course a bigger stage. But if he can convince him, because for me, after Manchester City, where does Raheem Sterling go? I could see him at Madrid, the current Madrid that could hire anyone. I could see him at Madrid. I could see him I couldn't see him at Dortmund. I think he's past that. I think he's past that. So I couldn't see him at Dortmund, but I could see him at PSG probably. Yeah, I could see him at PSG. I could see him. Look, I don't want to say this, but I can't see him at Arsenal. He's just 26 years of age. He's gonna command a lot of money in terms of transfer fee, and he's also gonna command a lot of wages as a player who's played at a top level consistently for 3, 4, 5 good years under Pep Guardiola. It's gonna it's gonna be very, very expensive. But again, that's a transfer now that I cannot rule out. Raheem Sterling from Manchester City. The big question is, can it be believable end to end from Manchester City and then to Arsenal? That is where the problem is, because I believe Sterling will feel like it is a heavy drop from Manchester City to Arsenal, despite the fact that Arsenal could be willing to offer him, the kind of money he wants, because of, Edwards said, we want to give players the money they want. We want to give, we want to be able to bring in 70 million signings, 100 million signings, after we form the basic structure of the team, which we have actually done. So, if I think about it, Sterling is, it will be for me, it's a no-brainer. Right, it's a no-brainer for Arsenal. Go get him. It's a no-brainer for Raheem Sterling. Stay at Manchester City. No matter what happens, unless you get a big deal from PSG or Real Madrid, stay at Manchester City. There is no better place to be rather than under Pep Guardiola. I don't know what you people think about that, but that's my opinion, and I don't see that happen. The second reason as to why I think Sterling could leave Manchester City, and I've spoken about this in the last in the last 1.5 minutes, is Jack Grealish and playing time at City. It's so competitive. It's so competitive. Yet they do not even have a striker, and I think what Pep is trying to do now is he wants to get a goal scoring source. He wants to have a player who can be that source of goals. It's not Raheem Sterling, definitely. So he's looking at Jack Grealish, and of course now we've seen Phil Foden come back. So he's looking at Jack Grealish, Phil Foden, and then Gabriel Jesus, and then Riyad Mahrez. He's got to find a false nine. If Ferran Torres only breaks into that team more regularly than you can imagine, then it's gonna mean one or two things. That means, because for me, I think Grealish is still a constant. At this stage of season, Grealish is a constant. 100 million. You don't just drop him like that. So what's gonna happen there is Grealish is a constant. If you get Ferran Torres to score for you the goals, you're gonna have one wing where you have the likes of Phil Foden, we have the likes of Raheem Sterling fighting for that. It's gonna be so competitive, right? It's absolutely gonna be so competitive. And the bad news for Raheem Sterling is his versatility is in jeopardy, right? I don't think he is as versatile as Ferran Torres. I don't think he's as versatile as Gabriel Jesus, because we've seen Gabriel Jesus play off the wings. We saw that against Arsenal, and he actually did very, very well. So Raheem Sterling to Arsenal, again, that's a transfer that is absolutely up there in the air. Very, very difficult to condense, but you never know. And I've already said this with Arsenal stories. You never know. I didn't believe we could sign a 50 million centre back. We have one, and things are really running very well for him at Arsenal. So you never know. We brought in Thomas Partey, 45 mil. The price tag for Raheem Sterling, I expect it to be around 60 million, 50 to 60 million, because it's just 26, 27. He's in his prime. So an Englishman who's had 5 consecutive good seasons in his prime, coached by Pep Guardiola, played with Manchester City, won the league on a couple of occasions. How much are you gonna pay for him? You already know the answer, right? You already know the answer. It's hell a lot of money. But talking about a lot of money, lots and lots of money, right? Talking about lots and lots of money. Take a breather, go see. I have. Newcastle believes to be interested in a proliferation of players. They want, and they simply I don't know. I think they're gonna have an exodus. They're gonna clear out and bring in new faces, because the fact now, and I was I think it was Tifo Football's video that I was watching yesterday, and they were trying to explain how Newcastle becomes the biggest club and how Newcastle becomes the world's richest club. They want Saka. They want Saka. You have seen the Marshall Leagues, but why would Newcastle want Marshall? Why would they? Look, I would understand if they went in for Coutinho. They've got to spoil some money, because for me, I think Coutinho is wasted money. If I'm Newcastle, I don't go for Filippo Coutinho. This is not a Newcastle show, so I'm not even interested in who they bring in. But leave Saka alone. That is what I'm saying. So, among the players that have been linked with Newcastle, including Anthony Martial, Kylian Mbappe, Erling Haaland, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, even things that you think will never happen, Saka has been linked with a move to Newcastle. And the reason that's why I gave this my attention is it is realistically possible. Sorry to say this, and not many Arsenal fans don't want to hear it, but it's realistically possible for Newcastle to take Bukayo Saka. I think, let's be honest. Yes, Saka is one of those few players, young players that have actually signed their new contracts. I think last year, he did pen an extension to his contract with Arsenal, and Yeah, he's been our best player for 2 seasons now. But let's think about it. Let's talk about it. This is a Newcastle side that is bringing loads and loads of money in the game. So I'm not really trying to say that Saka will move to Newcastle because of the money. No. But what they're gonna do there, and that's why I think players like Saka are gonna be, under a very, very, tough time to make difficult decisions. Is if Newcastle only gets a good manager with a good profile, a respectable manager with a respectable profile. Let's say, because I know Steve Bruce at the end of the day is gonna lose his job, right? And he's gonna lose his job. Not in a bad way, really, not in a bad way, but of course, the biggest club in the world now, demands some of the best, talents, in terms of players, and of course some of the best talents in terms of, coaching and management. So I think at the end of the day, I'm sorry to say this, but he will lose his job. For me, that's a constant, Steve Bruce. And if they get in, for example, I'm still searching for some of the best managers in the world. I need to get the best. Okay, if they can get Zinedine Zidane or Antonio Conte, if they can get any of those two, it's gonna be very, very hard for any player to reject Newcastle. They've got the money, but they have also got that coach that appeals to you. They've got that manager that appeals to you. They've got everything. They also have, they've also got a stadium that really appeals. The St. James Park is absolutely huge, and I think one of the finest in the UK. But the big problem for me now is, how do clubs like Arsenal keep their players amidst the ever-growing number of giant clubs that are now sprouting out of nowhere? Because for me, Newcastle, yes, it has been a big club before. We need to know that that this is a fact. Newcastle has been a big club before, right? It wasn't always small, and it is these owners, the likes of the Cronkies, right, that made Newcastle the club it is. It was a big club. Probably could, let's see how many English titles they have, right? Can't really find the trophies they have. But they should have a league. I know, because they've had some of the likes of Alan Shearer, some of the league's best players. So I'm ultimately sure they do have a league title. They have won a league title before in history. So for me now, the big question now is, how does Arsenal survive? How do we survive in this environment, right? But also a bigger question is, how do we turn down these bids? Because I know Newcastle at some point in time will try to get Saka. Yes, it's been linked with that Saka to Newcastle, 100 million, blah 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 blah. But there's a time when this is going to reach a point where it is reality, right? We've never sold a 100 million player, and I know with players like Bukayo Saka, that could happen. Can Saka turn down Newcastle? Yes, he is emotionally attached to Arsenal, but what about his career? He's looking at Arsenal as a club that is not taking him anywhere in terms of his career, and he might look at Newcastle as a club that is, new kids on the block, building something. They want to win the league as quick as possible. Why don't I go there? That could be the message in his head. And again, can Arsenal turn down 150 million, 120 million, 110 million from Bukayo Saka? Can they turn down that offer? It would be really, really resistant. So at the end of the day, it's gonna be very, very hard. It's gonna be so very hard times for Arsenal, especially in keeping our players, and also because attracting new players is already a big problem. no Europa League, no Champions League. What you've got to do is, just pick up scrap and tell people that you're remolding, you're rebuilding this scrap into better players. But there are better players out there. Can you attract them? No. Can Newcastle attract them? I think Newcastle can attract Jose Moua. They have the money. I think they can attract anyone. At the moment, they've got the money and they have an excuse. We are revolutionizing, right? We are building a revolution. Arsenal are not revolutionizing. I don't know. We are still evolving at a very, very slow pace. But those are the two stories that I want to discuss. Later, I will discuss Frank Casey as well. And then the manager's new possible contract.